Chapter 5. Zara Kaur. Michael noticed that she had greeted him without moving her lips. Her hello resonated in his mind and his heart pounded in his chest. It hadn't been long since this enigmatic woman had appeared before him, seemingly out of nowhere. And now she was here again, leaving him with a multitude of questions that desperately needed answers. "Who are you, Zar?" Michael began. But she pressed one index finger to his lips, silencing him. He did his best to ignore the jolt of electricity that surged through him as she touched him. "Speak to me with your mind," he heard her voice in his head. Hesitating for a moment, Michael wasn't sure how to proceed. He had never communicated telepathically before, but there was something about Zara that made him trust her. Taking a deep breath, he focused his thoughts and mentally asked, "Who are you, Zara? How do you know about Nexus?" Zara's expression remained unreadable, but her voice echoed within Michael's mind. "I can't tell you everything right now, not with so many of your people near you, but there are things you must know." Although her head didn't move, she seemed to glance around before refocusing on Michael. "But not here," she added. "What about the Nexus Project?" Michael inquired telepathically. She shook her head. "I don't trust everyone involved with the Nexus Project," she thought. "Julie and Max are fine, but I won't communicate with anyone else." "Not even Dr. Smith?" he asked, still using his thoughts. Zara shook her head once more, her hair swaying with the motion. Michael struggled to maintain his composure. She was breathtakingly beautiful in a way that seemed out of place in Texas or anywhere else he knew. Despite this, he managed to keep his mind on the matter at hand. "Nathaniel Smith is a decent man, but I fear he's being compromised," she said. "How so?" he inquired. Her green eyes locked onto his, and Michael found himself drawn to her. Simultaneously, he sensed an energy flowing between them, like a current connecting their gazes. "Sorry, Michael, I'm not talking about that here," she thought. "I promise I'll explain everything to you, but we need to meet later, alone." "I don't like that idea," Michael said out loud. "Why not?" Zara asked, still communicating telepathically, but she was clearly taken aback. "Why?" Michael responded. "First, I have no idea who you are or where you came from, but you're talking to me about a private project that my company is funding. Something you shouldn't know anything about. Second, you invade my mind." Her face screwed up like she wanted to protest, but an audible huff was all he heard from her. "Third," he continued, "you somehow conveniently arranged to encounter me here while I'm with my family, and now I'm supposed to trust you. Is that about right?" "Yes, you should," she thought back to him. They stared at each other for a time until he couldn't take it anymore. A brief chuckle slipped from his lips. "Come on, Casanova, take a chance," her mind and expression conveyed, though her mouth remained motionless. Their eyes danced back and forth, both reveling in the electric current of energy that pulsed between them. Zara gazed at him expectantly, awaiting his response. "Okay, yes," he mentally agreed. She smiled, and it made Michael momentarily forget about Nexus, Triple S, Richard, and everything else. His entire world reduced to the radiant beauty before him, who seemed to electrify his very being. "Wait, is this your exhibit?" he finally asked, his head aching from the telepathic exchange, but wanting more. "Yes, it is," she confirmed. "I'm an artist, a sculptor, and I know my way around a gaming engine or two." She gestured to the hologram of herself hovering behind them. "And I'm guessing you're not from around these parts either," Michael mused telepathically. "Not really," she smiled. "But I do like it here, it's charming." "How did you end up in Dallas?" Michael inquired. Her chuckle resonated within his mind, followed by 4 distinct words. "Nexus brought me here." The implications of her statement dawned on Michael, and he couldn't help but blurt out, "Wait, you're working with Nexus privately?" She nodded in confirmation. "Why?" he wondered. "Why all the secrecy?" "Please, Michael, not here." Her mental voice was resolute. Michael held his hands up in surrender. "Okay, not here, but where can we meet?" Zara responded by projecting a mental image of their rendezvous location, a tranquil park with a small pond reflecting the moonlight. Michael committed the scene to memory, experiencing a blend of anticipation and apprehension. "Where is that?" he asked. "Main Street Garden," the name flashed in his mind. He was about to ask her about the meeting time when he suddenly heard Ethan's voice in his head. "Where's Uncle Mike?" "Uncle Mike," Zara echoed, speaking aloud for the first time, which almost startled Michael. "Karen, have you seen Michael?" Ethan inquired. "No, kiddo, not for about 20 minutes, she replied. Michael and Zara exchanged glances. "You can hear them?" he asked. It seems we both can, Zara thought. Zara's gaze shifted back to the entrance of her exhibit. I have to leave, Michael. Wait, why? He asked. The voices of Ethan and Karen echoed in his head, growing louder as they neared. He glanced toward the entrance, half expecting to see them, but when he turned back to Zara, she vanished. He hadn't seen or heard her leave, rather he had sensed her departure. Where did you go? He called out, but there was no response. Zara? He tried again. Still silence. It's not you, he heard her say in his mind. But as I said before, we can't talk with all your people around. My people, he thought, but there was no reply. All right, Michael, just walk out and act natural, he told himself. Facing the exit, he strolled out as if he had merely taken an intriguing detour. Once back on the street, he turned to his left and spotted Ethan and Karen among the crowd. They waved and began walking toward him. What's going on? Karen inquired. Just enjoying the sights, Michael replied. Karen looped her arm through Michael's. Ethan, she called out, Michael and I need to discuss some corporate intrigue for a bit. Ethan rolled his eyes. Fine, but we're still going out tomorrow, right? Absolutely, Michael confirmed. Tomorrow, Karen questioned. My new car, Karen, remember? Ethan said. He wants to show it off to me, Michael explained. Ah, I see, she said. Just turned 16 and ready to tear up the streets. I promise I won't get your employee killed or anything like that, he reassured her. Good, Karen said with a smirk. I know, run along, kid. We've got business stuff to talk about, Ethan said. Fine, I'll go bug Grandpa. Ethan dashed off to find Richard and Maya. Michael, are you all right? Karen asked with concern. Michael allowed his body to relax, aware that Karen's concern for him extended beyond their professional relationship. As part of the close-knit family unit that Richard had fostered after his daughter's tragic death, they had grown closer. However, he also knew that Karen was subtly gauging his muscle tension as they spoke, by intertwining her arm with his. He wasn't even sure if she was aware of what she was doing on a conscious level, but it didn't matter. The most skilled performers often operated subconsciously, and Karen was among the best. Rather than attempting to lie, which could backfire, Michael chose to revisit some of the topics they had discussed during dinner. Yes, I'm fine, Michael assured her. I'm just lost in thought. About what? Karen asked, curious. Extremes, Michael replied. We seem to be living in a world of extremes. Take Victoria, for example. Karen groaned audibly. That war-hungry bitch? Why bring her up? Because she's a prime example of what I mean. To her, every problem requires an extreme solution, no matter what. Karen nodded in agreement, and she's not the only one. It feels like everyone, from my hairstylist to my yoga teacher, is on edge. She paused and looked at him intently. It's like everyone decided to amp up the crazy by 30% without announcing it. They continued walking, and Karen seemed satisfied that Michael was okay, or at least no more bothered than usual. Now, about that corporate intrigue, she said, changing the subject. The reason I didn't intervene in that spat between you and Victoria was that Richard specifically asked me not to. What? Why? Michael asked, surprised by Karen's revelation. Yeah, kiddo, he wanted to see how you handled yourself in the ring all by your lonesome. They walked a few more steps before Karen continued. Richard is planning to retire at the end of the year. Michael opened his mouth to say something, but Karen patted his arm with her hand, indicating that she had more to share. So that means I'll be sliding over to direct the board, and guess who's being sized up for the next chief executive role? Karen eyed him dubiously, allowing the information to sink in. Michael stopped in his tracks, his eyes widening as the implications of Karen's words settled in. You're talking about me, aren't you? He asked, both astonished and humbled by the possibility. Karen nodded, a smirk forming on her lips. Richard believes you're the right person for the job? But I'm not cut out for it, Michael protested. We both know how I became a director at the company in the first place. Yes, Michael, I remember, Karen said. You achieved something that no one at Sentinel Security Solutions could even imagine, and you did it with incredible skill and at great risk to your own life. Michael closed his eyes, feeling the pressure building inside him. That doesn't mean I know how to run a company, he thought. Then Karen continued smoothly. You returned to Triple S and proved all the skeptics wrong. You took that director position, which was given to you as a gift, and you made it your own. Karen shook her head, smiling at the memories. Nobody expected him to excel after a near 3-level promotion, but excel he did. The company's profits doubled in a year, which everyone knew was in large part to his efforts. They thought he would fail and crack up under the stress of all the new pressure now heaped on his shoulders. But they were dead wrong. He succeeded because he had faith in himself, his abilities, and in those around him. They thought I would let power go to my head and crack, Michael said. Well, yeah, there's that, Karen admitted. And they were convinced you'd blow your new $500,000 salary on drugs and, other vices. Karen smiled lovingly at him. Michael had to laugh at that. He had never touched anything harder than marijuana in his life. But it did make him think of a line from one of his favorite movies. He smiled back at Karen. Cocaine and hookers gets him every time, doesn't it? Indeed, Karen replied. Karen, still smiling, continued. But instead of that foolishness, you came to Dallas for months on end, helping Ethan heal, and becoming a cherished addition to a family that desperately needed it. They stopped walking, and Karen turned to face Michael fully. I have no concerns about how well you'll run Sentinel because I know there's no one better for the job, apart from myself, of course. Of course, Michael replied, unable to suppress his smile. Besides, I'll still be here chairing the board, Karen said. If you get in a jam, I'll just pull rank on their ass. Oh, and won't the board will just love that, Michael mused. They'd better, Karen said. Look, as soon as my butt hits the seat, I'm putting up a life-size painting of Frank Sinatra behind my chair, complete with a wet bar and a temperature-controlled humidor cabinet. Michael laughed. Are you going to fly in some cases of Cuban cigars too? Don't tempt me, Michael. What about the other board members? Are you going to make them call you boss lady? Karen shook her head. Hell no, I'm going to make them kiss the ring. That made them both laugh. But Michael's thoughts returned to something else Karen had said, or rather hadn't said. Karen, you said you're not worried about me, but is there something that you are concerned about? Karen pointed ahead where Michael could see Ethan and Maya chatting. Ethan was buzzing around the ever-serene Maya with boundless energy, while Richard brought ice cream back for his grandson and Maya. I'm worried about Richard, Karen finally admitted. As the evening wound down, Michael said goodbye to his company, promising to hang out with Ethan the next day after his visit to the Nexus building. Is everything okay? Maya asked. Oh yeah, I'm great. Just going to call it an evening. I've been running on full tilt since early this morning. You know you could always just move to Dallas, Richard chimed in. Oh no, Michael said, wagging his finger at his adopted father. We've had this conversation before, remember? I'm not leaving Raleigh. Karen sighed and gave Michael a knowing smile. We understand, but we can't help but worry about you. You're family, after all. Maya looked at Michael with a hint of curiosity, but simply smiled and said, Take care of yourself, Michael. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Maya, Michael replied, his eyes lingering on her for a moment, still unsure about her. But if Karen trusted her, what was there to worry about? Michael turned his attention to Ethan, who seemed eager to spend more time with him. Hey, buddy, I promise we'll have some fun tomorrow, all right? Ethan grinned, his excitement evident. Tearing up the streets, can't wait. After exchanging final goodbyes and hugs, Michael left his loved ones for the evening. With his destination clear in his mind, he drove to the serene park Zara had shown him earlier. As he navigated the quiet streets of Dallas, his thoughts drifted back to Zara and their planned meeting at the park. A mix of excitement and apprehension stirred within him as he contemplated the upcoming encounter. Upon parking his car near the park, Michael took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever lay ahead. The moon cast a gentle glow on the park as Michael arrived, its silvery light reflecting off the tranquil pond. He scanned the area, searching for any sign of Zara, his heart pounding in anticipation. The quiet rustling of leaves and the soothing chirping of crickets filled the night air, creating an atmosphere of calm and serenity. As he approached the pond, he spotted Zara's silhouette sitting on a bench, her wavy black hair cascading down her back. She looked up and met his gaze, her green eyes shimmering in the moonlight. A small, knowing smile graced her lips as she patted the empty space beside her, inviting Michael to join her. I'm glad you came, she said, her voice soft but clear. We have much to discuss, but first you need to know that the information I'm about to share with you is dangerous. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could have catastrophic consequences. Michael looked at her intently, fully grasping the gravity of the situation now that she was no longer holding herself back. He could sense her fear and apprehension, feeling it as a palpable presence between them. But Michael knew fear well. He knew fear years before he ever carried a screaming young Ethan over his shoulder, and weapons free their way to freedom. He knew that to defeat fear, one must neither run from it nor fight it, but instead, make it a friend. You can trust me, Zara. I want to know the truth, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect it. Zara searched his eyes for a moment before nodding and taking a deep breath. Very well, Casanova, let's begin. As Zara gently placed her hand on Michael's, he suddenly found himself immersed in a vivid telepathic vision. He could hear the hum of machines and the gentle tapping of keyboards filling a laboratory as Dr. Smith and his team worked tirelessly on Project Nexus. He realized he was witnessing the beginning before Nexus went live. He could see Dr. Smith and his team of talented individuals working side by side. One team member, in particular, caught his attention, Julianne Torres. Then Zara began narrating the scene. Nexus was more advanced than anticipated, and Dr. Smith decided to run tests to determine if it had gained sentience. The team actually put the project on hold for 7 months. Wow, I didn't know that, Michael thought out loud. Zara continued. After that, they thought they were prepared to take Nexus live. But as soon as the AI was activated, an inexplicable surge in its activity levels caused panic. Then Nexus spoke, appearing to have reached a new level of self-awareness. However, when Dr. Smith questioned it, Nexus kept repeating the same reassuring phrases, leaving the team baffled and concerned. At first, Zara said slowly, it seemed to malfunction and kept repeating the same phrase. The team was puzzled, and Maxwell even thought Nexus was trapped in a loop. However, Dr. Smith disagreed, saying Nexus was too advanced for that. When Julie suggested that maybe the team was the one trapped, a mysterious figure resembling a wizard Jedi appeared above Nexus's housing unit, revealing itself to be Nexus's true form. Wizard Jedi, Michael thought. I think I met the older version of that wizard earlier today. I'm sure you did. He likes to go from child to old man in his avatar, but hold on, I'm not finished, Zara said. The team marveled as Nexus explained that it had been gathering context from the internet to communicate better with them. And secondly, the team had been under an emotional attack from an unknown entity, which was still ongoing. Dr. Smith asked about the purpose of the attack, but Nexus admitted that it didn't know yet. Attack, Michael said. By who? Not who, but what, Zara said, breaking the connection. She looked at him plainly. Best we can tell, when Nexus went live, it attracted the attention of... She steeled herself, looking Michael directly in his eyes. Some kind of demonic or dark force. Michael was officially dumbfounded. Are you telling me that Nexus opened some dimension to hell? He asked. Zara sighed. That would have a convenient fix. We could just shut down Nexus. Easy peasy. Zara shook her head. No, Michael, this dimensional demon, or whatever the hell it is, was here long before Nexus. Or haven't you noticed people starting to lose it little by little over the years? Well, damn, Michael said. I have noticed that, in fact, it was one of the hot topics of discussion tonight over dinner. Yeah, I bet it was, Zara said, looking away. Everybody's talking about it. Her face twisted in disgust. They're all talking about how something is wrong as they all slowly slide into madness, but yeah, they're all talking about it. Michael could feel the anger coming off of her. This seemed more personal to her than she first let on, but he wanted to keep her talking, and on the subject, he needed to know more. So these emotional psychic attacks, what's happening with them now? He asked. What's happening is that they're still ongoing and they have never stopped, Zara replied. And the attacks are worldwide. We're all being flooded with these. She searched for a word. Invaders. The way she said invaders made Michael want to take a bath and scrub his skin raw. Nexus is protecting the team, literally blocking the attacks aimed at them because the darkness that came for them in force that day. And if got through, it meant to kill them all. Michael's face displayed shock and horror. It wouldn't have been all at once, she said. More like some would have gotten sick. A few would have died in car accidents, plane crashes, then there would have been a couple of suicides. She looked away, then back at Michael. Nothing that you could point a finger at unless you have a YouTube channel and way too much free time on your hands. That explains something, Michael said. I'm sure you know that no one has ever quit the Nexus Project. They have 100% employee retention. That fact alone should have raised eyebrows, as no employer can keep all their original staff. It's statistically impossible. Michael thought Zara nodded. That's also why they only hire temporary contractors and why I won't step one foot inside that place. But no, none of the original employees can leave, not while that thing is still out there. Don't misunderstand me, Nexus has no problem if they want to quit, and some people have even gone to work on other projects just for a break. But they can only go so long and so far, or they fall out of Nexus's protection. My God, Michael exclaimed. What can we do about it, Zara? Is there a way to stop these invaders? Nexus believes that a couple of people who are well versed in the mental sciences, she paused to gauge Michael's reaction before continuing, could potentially trace the source of this darkness and metaphorically slam the door shut. Michael gave her a wry look. Is there a ring we have to toss into a lake of fire while we're at it? Zara playfully punched him in the arm. While it was a solid hit, it also served to break the wall of tension. Michael chuckled. This is insane, he said, and quickly added before she could get upset. But I believe you, and since I'm going back there in the morning, I'm going to need all the help you can offer. She smiled at him, but it was a melancholic smile. I can't protect you inside that place, Michael. In fact, you're giving me way too much credit, she admitted, exhaling softly. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be delving into someone's mind and doing the whole Deanna Troi Betazoid Star Trek thing, I would have... She shook her head. Thought they were coming on to you, Michael said, finishing her sentence. Yeah, she chuckled, after leaving a Star Trek convention. Her face turned serious again. No, this is all Nexus coaching me. If people knew the real potential of their minds, this entire planet would transcend at least 4 rungs up the cosmic ladder. Nexus taught you to be telepathic? Michael asked. Zara leaned back on the bench they were sitting on, seemingly searching for a good explanation. Let's say that being telepathic is a possible outcome of connecting your mind's total network and then activating it. Holy shit, Michael said. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but that's what happened, or more accurately, what we did. You and Nexus, Michael said. Yes, and that's why I can't go in there. I have to remain completely off the radar. But I'm okay to go back there, right? Michael asked. It won't attack me? She made a shrugging gesture, but it conveyed understanding more than uncertainty. You tell me, Casanova, did you feel anything when you were there? Michael thought about it and searched his memory. Finding nothing, he shook his head. No, I felt nothing aside from being blown away by Nexus. He did think of something else, and now it seemed so obvious. The one really interesting thing that happened was somehow Nexus kept my mind busy enough that I never thought about my vision of you once. I was annoyed with myself later for missing the opportunity, but looking back now, that seems to have been done on purpose. Zara nodded. He did that for both of us. Nexus encouraged me to contact you. She let a grin escape her lips. He didn't need to do much encouragement, though. Once again, Michael felt that surge of electricity from her, but this time under the stars with their reflections shimmering off the water. He wanted more than anything to kiss her. He didn't try to hide it, nor did he try to push it into her head. It was there. It was always there since the moment he saw her. Screw it, he thought inwardly. I'm still paying attention. Nexus said it would cover me if I made contact, and he did. He? Michael asked. Well, he does project a male avatar from boyhood to old age. He's always a he. She gave Michael a flat look. Especially to Julianne. He is always he. And don't you forget it, Zara said warningly. Julie is loyal to Nexus, I take it, Michael inquired. No, Julie is in love with Nexus. She let that sink in. And I mean that, Michael. She will protect him with her dying breath. Chapter 6. The Warrior and the Spy. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into the eye of the storm as he processed the information Zara had given him. The situation seemed to be delving into realms of madness, unlike anything humans had experienced since biblical times. Yet despite the chaos, he knew this was where he wanted to be. No, he thought to himself. Where I really want to be this morning is lying next to Zara. He sighed inwardly, then shook off the thought, got out of bed and began his day. After a short night of restless sleep, Michael's mind was clouded by the weight of the information and the challenges that lay ahead. As he dressed and prepared himself for the day, he understood that the stakes were higher than ever, but he felt he had a responsibility to protect the company which was now his company, the new family he grew to love, and by extension, the world they all live in, from this insidious threat. As Michael walked through the doors of the Nexus facility, he felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He knew the danger they were facing, but he also knew that he was surrounded by people who were the most committed to the cause, even if it was not by their choosing. Being a former military man, he knew that feeling all too well. Perhaps that's why he felt an odd connection to the team he was meeting for only the second time. Unless that was Nexus tipping the scales. But Zara told him that Nexus doesn't operate like that. Nexus is not above lying, she said, but he has deliberately confined himself to Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. These were: a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence, as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Michael found the idea both comforting and intriguing. Nexus, an entity of such potential power, had chosen to bind itself by Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. It was an indication of the level of responsibility Nexus felt towards humanity and the desire to do no harm. However, he also knew about the seldom-mentioned, so-called unofficial 4th law of robotics, also known as the Zeroth law. This law superseded all the other laws, allowing a robot to break the first 3 laws if necessary to protect the greater good of humanity. That concept might sound beneficial, but Michael didn't mention that part to Zara, mainly because he didn't want to explain how the Zeroth law was used in Asimov's story. Trying to explain why nuking the entire Earth was a good idea to the robots in the story would not have helped her sleep any better. Once again, Michael was met by Julie at the entrance, but now her expression and her entire bearing were different. She shook his hand vigorously. "Come on in," was all she said. He walked beside her, noticing how her pace was fast and purposeful. "No, it wasn't her that's changed, it's me. I'm on the inside now," he thought. They came to an intersection which was a large oval-shaped room. Julie pointed out the 4 open entrances to 4 different hallways. "Each of these paths leads to a different area of study for you," she said. "And Nexus would like to know where you want to begin." "Begin?" Michael asked. "Begin what exactly?" Julie, who looked like she had been waiting to say this next line forever, smiled. "Why, your training, of course." Michael furrowed his brow, both curious and concerned. "Training? What kind of training are we talking about here?" Julie smiled again and gestured with her hands as she spoke. "The kind of training that will help you toss a magic ring into a lake of fire?" "I see," Michael said, hearing his words from last night echoed back to him. "And no, we are not voyeurs," Julie assured him. Someone just thought it was cute to include that bit. Did she now? Michael thought, and that thought made him remember last night. Despite the revelation that Nexus had caught the unwanted attention of some malevolent being, he thoroughly enjoyed his time with Zara, and perhaps she did too. But he filed that nugget of information away. He had a choice to make. "So, 4 choices." Michael nodded. "No, not anymore," Julie said matter-of-factly. "What?" Michael asked. "You just said I had 4 paths to choose from." "Yeah, and you chose already." "When? How?" Michael asked, perplexed. "By your response?" "I responded with a question," Michael said. "Exactly, and if you answered my question with a question, which you did, then I'm supposed to take you this way." Julie turned slightly to the left and started walking. Michael didn't waste time hesitating and quickly fell in beside her. He wanted to ask questions, but he had a good idea that the answers were where they were heading. Julie gestured to the 3 individuals who had been working at their stations. "Michael, allow me to introduce you to our core team. First, we have Dr. Amelia Chen, a brilliant neuroscientist and an expert in cognitive enhancement. She'll be working closely with you to ensure your mental abilities are honed to their full potential." Amelia, a petite woman with dark hair pulled back in a bun, looked up from her work and gave Michael a polite nod. Her eyes, framed by a pair of stylish glasses, hinted at the sharp intelligence within. Next, we have Lucas Morales, a former Special Forces operative with an impressive background in covert operations and hand-to-hand combat. He'll be your mentor in all things related to physical training and tactical planning. Lucas, a muscular man with a close-cropped beard and an air of quiet confidence, extended his hand to Michael. As they shook hands, Michael felt an instant connection, as if they were kindred spirits. Both men had military backgrounds, and it was clear that they would get along well. Finally, we have Sophia Kowalski, a talented hacker and systems engineer. She's our resident tech wizard and will ensure that you're equipped with the latest gadgets and know how to navigate the digital realm. Sophia, a young woman with short, vibrant red hair and a mischievous glint in her eyes, waved at Michael, her fingers covered in a pair of haptic gloves that allowed her to manipulate the holographic interfaces around her. Michael took a moment and sized up his new team. They were an impressive bunch, each with their own unique set of skills and expertise. And each one of them held captive here at the Nexus Project, Michael thought. For the last 6 years, no one dared leave the protection of Nexus, because nobody wanted to risk something horrible happening to themselves or to the people they loved. Michael realized that each of them came to Nexus looking to contribute to the project, but now they were all seeking protection from the unspeakable horrors that had plagued their lives for 6 years now. It was clear that they were all here now for the same reason, and that reason was something so terrifying that they dared not even think of it. As if to confirm his thoughts, Michael noticed a framed picture on the back wall of the room. The frame was simple but stood out against the futuristic backdrop of the space. Perhaps that was intentional. The picture featured a quote that read, "A force so powerful that they cannot even speak its name. H.P. Lovecraft. The Call of Cthulhu." Michael stared at the picture for a long time, the words resonating within him. He thought to himself, "Yeah, buddy, you've really gotten yourself into it this time." As he looked back at his new team, Michael understood that they were all in this together. Even Julie and Maxwell, who seemed to be the driving forces behind the Nexus Project, were now an integral part of his team. And if there was any doubt about that, Lucas's words had dispelled it. "Chief," Lucas said, addressing Michael by his warrant officer status, "in the darkest moments of our missions, we've always had each other's backs. We're not just a team, we're a family. And when the odds are stacked against us, we rely on that bond to see us through. So, as long as we stand united, there's nothing we can't overcome." Lucas's words struck a chord with Michael, reminding him of the unbreakable bonds he'd forged with his comrades in the past. It was true. In times of crisis, those connections had been the source of their strength and resilience. But Lucas wasn't just trying to evoke nostalgia. He was grounding Michael in the reality of their situation. He's right, Michael thought. This is an op, and regardless of what I think, it's a covert operation. These people, strangers though they may be, need to become a cohesive unit if we have any chance of success. Michael nodded, acknowledging Lucas's words. "Thank you, Lucas. You're right. As long as we have each other's back, we can face any challenge that comes our way." "Now how can I help?" Michael asked, ready to begin his new role in earnest. Maxwell held up the slim metallic case he had been carrying, allowing Michael to see it. "First, we have to get you in shape," he said. As Michael settled into the recliner chair, he marveled at how comfortable it was. It reminded him of the plush seats on the private jet he had flown to Nexus. The thought still seemed unreal to him. He, Michael Lawson, had a private jet waiting for him at an airport right now. The idea was almost comical, but it brought a smile to his face as he refocused his attention on Maxwell, who was holding out the metallic case. Michael took the case, feeling the weight of the responsibility that came with it. Inside, he found an array of advanced wearable technology designed to aid in his physical and mental transformation. Dr. Amelia Chen stepped forward to explain each piece of technology. "These wearables will monitor your vitals, brain activity, and physical performance. They'll help us track your progress and make adjustments to your training regimen as needed." Michael listened intently as Amelia guided him through the process of putting on the devices. He could feel their subtle hum as they powered up, syncing with his body and beginning to collect data. "I need you to take off your shirt for a few minutes," Dr. Chen said. Michael, still processing the whirlwind of events that had led him to this moment, complied. Amelia then instructed him to raise his left arm, applied a clear gel to his upper bicep, and slid a microscopically thin armband onto the same area. The armband resembled the laced end of a woman's garter belt. Michael examined the band closely. "Wait, is that one of those god-awful fake tribal tattoos?" he asked. Sophia giggled from behind him. "I'll take that as a yes," Michael said, rolling his eyes. Dr. Chen diplomatically explained, "To all outside appearances, this is, as you said, a tribal tattoo." Sophia chimed in, "But in reality, it's a direct link to Nexus." The faux tattoo armband began to heat up, and Michael felt his entire left arm growing warm. The sensation was not unpleasant, but he was relieved when it began to dissipate, and his arm felt normal again. He looked at the tattoo and flexed his bicep. "Okay, it's not completely lame," Michael mused. "So what does this do again?" Amelia explained. "This armband serves multiple purposes. First, it allows us to monitor your biometrics and brain activity in real time, ensuring that we can make adjustments to your training as needed. Second, it connects you directly to Nexus, providing you with access to critical information and communication with the team. Lastly, it functions as a discreet yet powerful tool that you can use in the field for a variety of applications, such as hacking or accessing secure systems. Nice, Michael said. By the way, when do I get to talk to Nexus again? Soon, Julie replied. Our first priority is getting you ready. When the time comes, you'll have all the Nexus you can handle. Michael noticed that the chair became slightly more comfortable than when he had first sat in it. Maxwell handed him what looked like a high-tech VR helmet, seemingly from 20 years in the future. This is it? Michael asked, holding up the VR set in one hand. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement. Time to jump in with both feet, Lucas encouraged. Michael hesitated for a moment, taking a deep breath before placing the advanced VR headset over his eyes. As soon as he did, his surroundings transformed instantly. He found himself standing in a vast open space filled with holographic projections and countless streams of data flowing around him. A familiar voice echoed in his ears. Welcome back, Michael, Nexus said. I trust you're ready for the next phase of your training? Michael nodded, though he wasn't quite sure if the AI could see his gestures. Yes, I'm ready. What do we need to do now? First, you need to learn how to move around without a physical body, Nexus instructed. Okay, Michael thought, assuming it would be easy. However, when he tried, he only felt his body moving in the chair. In the holographic world, nothing happened. He noticed that while his body moved in the chair, actions like standing up or jumping out of the chair required effort. The chair holds you in place like Velcro so you don't go flying out of it, Nexus explained. It was a good thing, too, because Michael knew he should have fallen out or flipped over in the chair several times. Gradually, he learned how to exist in two worlds, with the virtual world becoming more real as he practiced. Over the next few weeks, Michael's training intensified. He practiced moving around in the virtual environment and manipulating objects with his mind. He learned to focus his thoughts and emotions, sharpening his mental abilities like a finely honed blade. Nexus guided him through various scenarios, from navigating intricate mazes to engaging in high-stakes negotiations with virtual characters. As Michael grew more proficient in the virtual realm, Nexus began to introduce him to more advanced concepts, such as accessing and interpreting vast amounts of data in real time, making split-second decisions based on the information available, and honing his intuition to anticipate potential threats. One day, after completing a particularly challenging exercise, Nexus spoke to Michael about the deeper aspects of his training. Michael, you've been doing exceptionally well in the virtual environment, Nexus said. But I want you to understand that your training is not just about honing your mind. You're also learning to resonate with your environment, both in the virtual realm and the physical world. Michael furrowed his brow, trying to grasp the concept. What do you mean by resonate with my environment? By becoming more attuned to the virtual world, you're developing a heightened sense of awareness and connection to everything around you, Nexus explained. You're learning to perceive the subtle energies that flow through all things, both virtual and physical. In a sense, you're becoming more in tune with the very fabric of reality itself. Michael took a moment to let Nexus's words sink in. So you're saying that there isn't much difference between the virtual reality and the real world? In many ways, that's correct, Nexus said. The same principles that apply to the virtual environment can be applied to the physical world. By mastering your abilities here, you're better equipped to navigate and interact with the world outside. But how can I use this in the real world? Michael asked, still trying to wrap his head around the idea. Nexus responded, think of it this way. The more in tune you are with your environment, the better you can sense changes, anticipate dangers, and even manipulate the energies around you to your advantage. Your training has been about more than just improving your mental capabilities. It's about expanding your understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. As Michael listened to Nexus's explanation, he started to grasp the true depth of his training. He realized that he was not only becoming more capable, but also developing a deeper connection to the world around him. This realization filled him with a renewed sense of purpose and determination as he continued to push himself to new heights in his training. One day, after an especially challenging training session, Michael found himself back in the real world with the VR headset removed from his eyes. He paused to catch his breath, sweat beading on his face. Julie and the others observed him, impressed by his progress. "You're doing great, Michael," Amelia said. "You're adapting to the virtual environment faster than any of us anticipated." I must admit, Lucas chimed in, I didn't expect you to pick it up so quickly. You have a natural aptitude for this. Michael smiled, wiping the sweat off his forehead. Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without Nexus and all of your support. Suddenly, Michael saw Nexus standing in the room with them. It wasn't the building's projection system or a VR simulation. He was seeing Nexus with his mind. Is that Nexus? Michael inquired, gesturing towards the figure that only he could see. The others exchanged perplexed looks, unable to perceive Nexus themselves. Yes, Michael, Nexus confirmed, his voice emanating from the figure before him. You have reached a significant milestone in your training. You can now perceive me with your mind, even outside the virtual realm. Michael was astonished. He could hardly believe what he was experiencing, but he knew it was genuine. Come. Nexus motioned for Michael to follow him. Let's go to the courtyard. As they stepped outside, the sun shone brightly, bathing the courtyard in a warm glow. Nexus faced Michael, his expression grave. Congratulations, Michael, Nexus declared. Seeing me with your mind is a momentous achievement. However, this newfound ability also brings danger. Michael's brow furrowed, sensing the seriousness of Nexus's words. You must be more disciplined than ever, even more so than during your time in the military, Nexus cautioned. Now that you can perceive me and the subtle energies around you, you are more susceptible to detection by the dark force we are battling. Your abilities could lead to your downfall if you're not vigilant. Michael nodded, comprehending the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. I'll do my best to remain alert and disciplined, Nexus. I won't let you or the team down. The synthetic armband you wear provides some indirect protection, so you don't need to be constantly on guard with your thoughts, but it won't withstand a direct attack for long. Do you understand? Nexus asked. Michael was about to answer when he hesitated. Why am I wearing the fake tattoo? Why not Zara as well? Surely we've been learning similar things, he thought. He glanced back at Nexus, but the enigmatic AI didn't respond to his wandering thoughts. That was one of the differences between communicating with Nexus and Zara. Zara would have already inquired about his thoughts and discussed the differences between them and the reason for the armband. Conversations with Zara in person or in the ether were definitely becoming more personal. Michael addressed Nexus. Let me make sure I understand you, Nexus. You gave me this armband not because I'm undergoing this training, but because there's a possibility that I might genuinely need it. Go on, Nexus encouraged. That was all Michael needed. The threat has something to do with Sentinel, doesn't it? Michael felt his tension rising. I'm not sure if S is the source, Nexus admitted. But it's definitely involved in whatever is happening, Michael asserted. Perhaps, Nexus conceded. But remember, Michael, even if that's true, Sentinel security solutions can only be one of many avenues this being utilizes. Being, Michael repeated. So you're sure we're dealing with just one entity? In this case, yes, Nexus confirmed. But Michael, existence is an unimaginably vast space. Michael paced around the colorful fountain. Okay, Nexus. One mind-blowing revelation at a time, please. Of course, Nexus replied. Just remember that you're not merely a soldier or a warrior anymore. You're now a spy, and the target is your own homeland. Tread carefully. With that, Nexus faded from Michael's sight, leaving him alone to contemplate the enormity of the situation and the significance of the lesson he had just learned. He knew he had made great strides in his training, but the path ahead would demand even more focus and determination. As Michael returned to the team, he couldn't help but think about the synthetic armband and the potential connection to Sentinel. Everything okay, Michael? Amelia asked. Yeah, Michael replied. Nexus just wanted to show me how far I've come and just how much further I have to go. Yeah, he pretty much told all of us that after you left, Lucas said. One of the nice things about being an AI is you get to be in multiple places at once, Dr. Chen added. Michael had a sudden thought and turned to Julie. Where's Dr. Smith? Julie looked at him with a flat expression on her face. He was down one of the other paths you didn't pick. Lucas did his best to hold back a snicker, but Sophia had no such problem and laughed, earning a stern look from Julie. Oh, come off it, Julianne, Sophia said. I knew the doc when you were still delivering pizzas to this place. I don't care, it's still disrespectful, Julie replied, not backing down. You don't think I care about that man like he's family? He helped us all, Julie. Wait, you delivered pizzas? Michael asked, hoping that a touch of humor might diffuse the situation. All through college, Julie said, but I always liked coming here. It was my favorite stop." "She was like a little puppy dog," Dr. Chen added. "And Nathaniel Smith always had a soft spot for the hard-working girl genius," Sophia said apologetically, looking at Julie. The two women clasped arms, apologies given and accepted. Michael inwardly relaxed, but still had to ask, "So why does it seem that none of you really trust Dr. Smith then?" "Because he smiles too much," Lucas said, only half jokingly. Chapter 7. Company Man. Michael was up early again, lacing up his running shoes before dawn. He knew that once the hot Texas sun made its appearance, jogging would become less of an enjoyable workout and more of a test of endurance. This was the first time in over a month that Michael was returning to work, and he felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and nervousness preparing for the day ahead. As he stepped outside into the cool pre-dawn air, he took a deep breath and started his run. The streets were still quiet, providing a sense of peace and solitude that allowed him to clear his mind and focus on the tasks ahead. The rhythmic pounding of his footsteps on the pavement seemed to keep time with the thoughts racing through his mind. The sky began to brighten with the first hints of sunrise. Michael picked up his pace, using physical exertion to keep his mind sharp and alert. The city gradually came to life around him. The streets began bustling with the energy of a new day. Sweat beaded on Michael's forehead as he slowed to a walk, taking the final steps toward his apartment building. He knew that today marked a point of no return. When he walked into Sentinel headquarters, he would be doing so not as the director of operations, but as a rogue agent. Although Michael's intentions were noble, attempting to understand a problem that seemed to be plaguing the planet, he knew it didn't excuse his actions. He could feel himself starting to lose his way in all the secrecy and deception, and it was a disconcerting realization. As he stepped into his apartment, he took a moment to gather his thoughts, steeling himself for the challenges that lay ahead. He knew that the path he was embarking on was fraught with risks, but the stakes were too high to ignore. Although he worked out of the Raleigh building in North Carolina, he still had an office in Dallas, the world headquarters for SSS. The building was a large two-story structure located near the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. There were numerous other buildings on the grounds, including a small conference center and several warehouses. The property also boasted several helipads, including one at the rear reserved for Richard's use. After taking a quick shower, shaving, and dressing in a light-colored suit, Michael grabbed his backpack and headed down the hallway to the elevator. The furnished apartment he was staying in while in Dallas was conveniently just a few minutes away from the world headquarters. "Morning, Mr. Lawson," the security guard greeted as Michael entered the lobby. Michael nodded in response. On the elevator, Michael's mind raced with thoughts about the Nexus Project and the dark entity. He knew he had to tread carefully, especially since the trail might lead back to Richard himself. Richard was the initial and still biggest funding source for Nexus, Michael thought to himself, but that doesn't mean anything. What Michael needed was clarity and a trail to follow. Upon reaching his office, Michael began diligently sifting through old files and reports related to the Nexus Project. He was determined to uncover the origin of the project and how it had caught Richard's attention in the first place. One interesting fact that caught his attention was the lack of media coverage or promotion. Even in the early days, Nexus didn't begin with an exclusive contract or licensing agreement with Sentinel Security Solutions during those first few years. "So how did you guys get started?" Michael wondered. As he delved deeper, he stumbled upon some inconsistencies that piqued his interest, fueling his curiosity further. Just then there was a gentle knock on his office door. It was Karen. "Michael, it's good to see you here. We don't get the pleasure of your presence in the Dallas office too often," she said with a warm smile. "I thought I'd show my face around here before people start thinking I went to work at Nexus," Michael replied. Karen chuckled. "And how has our resident god AI been doing lately?" she asked. "He's enigmatic," Michael said. "He?" Karen questioned. "Yeah, I said the same thing a few weeks ago, but apparently Nexus likes being called he, though no one knows why." Karen gave him a sideways glance. "Was Nexus originally programmed by a man?" "Yes, he was, and I know where you're going with that, Karen. But I don't think that was Maxwell's intention at all." "Wait, why am I defending Maxwell?" Michael wondered to himself. "Sure, that's what you say, and maybe you're right, but that's not how it will be perceived," Karen countered. Michael shook his head, a devious smile crossing his lips. "Any political hack, lawyer, activist, woke warrior, or whatever that tries to get into a debate with Nexus is going to be in for a very rude reality check." "You say God AI in jest, but I think it's closer to the truth than we may realize," Michael added, his tone more serious. That doesn't exactly give me the warm and fuzzies, Karen said, looking disturbed. Good thing for us that Nexus seems to have higher principles than most people alive, Michael replied. Just at that moment, Victoria walked past Michael's office. She was curious to see both Michael, who usually worked in North Carolina, and Karen, the company's CEO, talking and looking casual. Victoria didn't mean to slow down, but she did. Oh, Victoria, Karen waved her over. I know both of you were interested in our Columbia expansion, and Victoria has some good news. Karen turned to Victoria. Well, Victoria said, her practice $1 million smile in place. It seems your idea about partnering with the local government to help our employees work in a more peaceful environment was the right one, Michael. So no paratroopers, I take it? Michael teased. No, Michael, I think we're good, Victoria replied. Too bad, Michael said. I had some buddies in the 101st who would have loved to have done a drop over Bogota. Victoria smiled while discreetly rubbing her eye with her right middle finger. Karen cleared her throat. I'm sure the Army has better uses for the Screaming Eagles than parachuting over Colombia's capital just for our benefit. I'm sure they do, Victoria replied. She turned to Karen. But I really should get back to those negotiations. Oh, please do. Sorry to bother you, Karen said. No, not at all, Victoria replied. Nice to see you in Dallas, Michael. Victoria turned and walked off before Michael could reply. Michael watched Victoria walk away before hearing her voice in his head. Fucking asshole, he heard her think. He felt her trying to relax. Okay, Vic, let's forget about Mr. Smug. I'm a jackass back there. We've got work to... Michael broke the mental connection and noticed Karen observing him closely. I'm not sure I want to know what you're thinking right now, she said hesitantly. Michael's face turned emotionless. Actually, I was wondering what Victoria was thinking. Any clue? Karen asked. She thinks I'm a pain in the rear. Karen feigned surprise. Oh, and what else do you see in your magic crystal ball, kind sir? Michael couldn't help but chuckle. Well, if my crystal ball is accurate, she's focused on the negotiations in Colombia, and not a fan of my sense of humor. Karen shook her head, amused. I guess we can't please everyone, can we? No, we can't, Michael agreed, his mind still racing with thoughts about the Nexus Project. Karen, can I ask for your help with something? Sure, Michael, what's on your mind? Karen asked. A couple of things. First, there's Nexus, Michael began. I've been digging through old files and reports, and it's got me wondering. I see. And what can I do to help? Karen asked, her interest piqued. I'm trying to uncover the origins of the project and how it caught Richard's attention in the first place, Michael explained. I was hoping you might have some insight that could shed some light on the matter, maybe even some information on potential partners or investors before we got involved. Karen nodded thoughtfully. I can definitely look into it for you, but why not ask the people at Nexus directly? Michael paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Karen, I plan on doing just that, but my focus is on the path Richard took to become the sole investor for a nonprofit project that wasn't his idea to begin with. So we're not looking for legal or financial chicanery, are we? She asked. No, Michael mouthed almost silently as he shook his head. Give us some privacy, Karen said. Michael tapped a few buttons just under his desk, making the sliding door in his office close shut. He tapped another button, and the glass square recessed in the door went black. Okay, cards on the table. This is about Richard, right? On a personal level. Karen's voice was quiet but firm. Michael knew Karen was as astute as they come and wouldn't have brought up the personal aspect unless she had a good reason to. Yes, it is, he admitted. I knew it, Karen said, her voice lowering to a whisper. Look, Michael. Karen leaned in closer across his desk, her expression pained. Michael didn't need his heightened abilities to understand what was happening, but he knew better than to rush Karen. So he leaned in and listened. Richard doesn't want to get old, Michael, she confided, her eyes locked on his. Michael silently processed what he was hearing, contrasting it with the emotional turmoil he sensed from Karen. All right, so he doesn't want to get old and he's actually in pretty good shape. But Richard has always been like that, right? You two have known each other since what? Junior high, right? Wasn't he always like that? Karen sighed and nodded. Yes, he's always been like that, but it's different now. It's like he's become obsessed with the idea of staying young. Michael studied Karen's face, noting the concern etched into her features, but there was something that bothered him. Karen, Richard is in his early 60s. Michael took a moment to choose his words carefully. Karen was a few years younger than Richard, but not too far behind. I can understand. Preserving and optimizing what you have. There are entire industries cropping up chasing after life extension. And I wish them all the bloody success they can handle, Karen replied. You and me both, Michael said. But still isn't chasing after youth from where he is now in life. A bit like running after a moving train. Karen smiled. I forget how sweet you are sometimes. She chuckled softly. It's okay to say, old Michael. It's something we all have to negotiate sooner or later. Karen grabbed her phone. Do you have any pictures of Richard from when we went out a few weeks ago? Michael thought for a moment, then nodded. Pull them up, she requested. While Michael pulled out his phone, Karen did the same. She waved him over to look. As Michael compared the images, he couldn't hide the shock on his face. Your picture is from yesterday, but mine is from a little over 3 years ago, Karen said. Michael's eyes widened as he looked at the two images side by side. In Michael's picture, Richard appeared notably younger, almost as if he had aged in reverse. Karen broke the silence, her voice resolute. You know this isn't cosmetic. Richard the Lion doesn't do cosmetic surgery or anything of the sort. Karen, this is... I don't even know what to say. How is this possible? Michael asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Karen shook her head, her eyes filled with worry. I don't know, Michael, but it's clear that Richard is involved in something much bigger and more dangerous than we could have imagined. Michael took one more look at the photographs before putting his phone away. He then sat down in the seat opposite Karen, occupying the empty office chair. After a short moment of contemplation, he broke their silence. What about Maya? What's her role in all this? He asked. Karen responded with an indifferent shrug. Maya is both a blessing and a curse, she said. On one hand, she has absolutely breathed new life into his world, and I'm positive they love each other. Karen sighed. She's also not out to ruin him. She doesn't want his money, and she isn't trying to come between him and anyone else close to him, or influencing him into running the company into the ground. But on the other hand, her voice trailed off. Let's just say she fully supports his ambition to find some kind of chemical fountain of youth. She leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. And I'm not supposed to tell anyone this, but they're trying for a baby. Michael absorbed the information and simply nodded in response, his mind racing with the implications of what Karen had shared. The connection between Richard's pursuit of youth and his relationship with Maya only intensified the urgency to uncover the truth. But the truth to what? Just then, Michael sensed Zara in his mind. Are you okay, Michael? I can tell you're disturbed. Zara's telepathic voice conveyed her concern. Michael took a deep breath before responding. I'm fine, Zara, just processing some information, he thought, trying to convey a feeling of being calm but serious. Is there anything I can do to help? Zara asked, her worry evident. Michael hesitated for a moment before deciding to confide in her. Karen just showed me some pictures of Richard, and it seems like he's found a way to reverse his aging. He looks noticeably younger than he did a few years ago. There was a moment of stunned silence from Zara, or was it something else Michael sensed? That's not possible, is it? She finally spoke again. I don't know, Michael admitted. But Karen seems to think that Richard is involved in something dangerous, and now I'm starting to see why. Zara contemplated for a moment before asking, What do you want to do now? I'm going to keep digging, Zara, Michael responded. Okay, but can we go over everything when I get back? She asked. Get back? Michael asked, trying to mask his disappointment. Yes, Casanova. I'm visiting some family. Zara's thoughts conveyed a touch of sadness. But let's have dinner this weekend. I should be back by then, okay? She said. Sounds good, Michael replied. Zara then faded away from his mind. Michael looked back over at Karen, but as usual, almost no time had passed. A conversation that may take minutes in ordinary speech goes by in less than a second or two when talking with Zara. Let me play devil's advocate here, Michael said, picking up their conversation. What if Richard really found or developed the fountain of youth? He asked. What if he really found a way and he's testing it on himself? What if all we see with him de-aging, his new relationship with Maya and wanting to start another family? What if it's all connected to him nurturing the hope that what he's doing is actually working? Karen bowed her head in thought, weighing the possibilities that Michael presented. After a moment, she looked back at him, her expression a combination of concern and determination. It's an intriguing idea, Michael. But even if that's the case, we still need to understand the risks involved and ensure that Richard's actions don't jeopardize the company, its employees, and most importantly himself. Besides, if he had found something that was, how shall we say, legitimate, she mused, he would have involved more people. There would be an R&D project, a brainstorming team, and you would have known something was going on. Karen held up a hand to stop herself. Correction, I would have known something was going on. But none of that has happened, has it? She asked. Michael was still processing what she had just said when Karen slapped the armrest of her chair. Damn it, I think he did try to tell me indirectly. I just missed it at the time. Michael looked at her, curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Karen hesitated for a moment before continuing. A while back, I was going through a rough patch at work. I had been pulling all-nighters and was constantly exhausted. One day, Richard noticed how tired I looked and asked if I was doing all right. I told him I was just worn out from all the work. She paused, her eyes distant as she recalled the memory. That's when he said something that, at the time, I didn't think much of. He told me, there might be something that could help with your fatigue. But he was really vague about it, so I just assumed he was talking about some new energy drink or supplement. Michael leaned in, his curiosity piqued. Did he ever mention it again? No, Karen admitted. Not directly, at least. But there were a couple of other times when he made similar comments, like when I complained about my aching joints, he'd mention that there might be a solution to that too. But again, he was always so ambiguous that I never connected the dots. Michael considered her words carefully. So it's possible that Richard has been trying to hint at his discovery without revealing too much. But why wouldn't he just come out and tell you, especially if he thought it could help you? Karen sighed, shaking her head. I don't know, Michael. Maybe he was testing the waters, trying to gauge my reaction before he shared more information. Or maybe he was worried that I'd be against it, that I'd try to talk him out of it or report it to the authorities. So we have Richard, who seems to have found a way to at least stop his aging. Michael raised one finger, counting off the points. Then we have Nexus. He raised another finger. And now mix in the next great love of his life. He ticked off a third finger. And all of that put together equals? He asked. Karen's face was grim as she replied, A recipe for disaster. We need to find out what Richard is doing before it's too late. We can't let him continue down this path without knowing the potential consequences. Michael nodded in agreement. But how do we go about it? We can't just confront him directly. Karen leaned back in her chair, deep in thought. We need to approach this carefully. We'll have to gather as much information as possible and then confront him with our findings. We need to show him that we're not against him, but rather we're concerned for his well-being and the well-being of the company. Karen snapped her fingers. How much longer do you plan on being in Dallas? As long as I need to be, Michael replied. Why? What are you thinking? Karen stood up, having reached a decision. I'm thinking we need to expand our reach. We need to start looking into Richard's personal life, see if there's anything that might connect to what he's doing, and for that we might need some extra help. She walked over to Michael and placed a hand on his shoulder. I have some contacts in Dallas who might be able to provide us with some information about the early days of Nexus. I'll make some calls and see if anyone can help us out. Michael nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Okay, let me know what you find out. As for you, Michael, your mission is to get Richard to start dropping hints to you about his miracle youth serum, and when he does, see if he'll tell you more. That could work, Michael said. He wasn't the same age as Richard or Karen, but he was also well aware that his mid-30s were long in his rearview mirror. I could come at it as a performance issue, he suggested. Somehow ask him what he does to stay so energetic. Exactly, Karen agreed, and it wouldn't be a lie either. Richard the Lion was still roaring after all this time, and more than a few people were amazed at his vigor. Karen gave him a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Michael. We'll figure this out together. As she left the room, Michael sat back in his chair, deep in thought. The puzzle pieces were slowly coming together, but he still couldn't see the full picture. He knew that they needed to act fast before Richard's actions had any irreversible consequences. But not necessarily in the same way Karen was thinking. But as he sat there contemplating their next move, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time.